Welcome to Storyboard, a show where we take a look at the story and writing the show has given us and see what works, what doesn't, and how we can learn from them. You know, growing up in an Asian country, a lot of emphasis on my life was placed upon studying. For tests, for exams, for homework, as homework. Yet, something I realized is that very few teachers know that each student learns differently. Not everyone learns best by reading a book and vomiting the details onto an exam paper. Which now brings us to Testing 1, 2, 3, an episode from Season 5 written by Amy Keating Rogers. This story is about Rainbow's need to study for an exam that will decide her future. Now, I won't be going through the episode scene by scene. Instead, I'll be picking up points in the story that I think will be interesting to look at. Let's start off with Rainbow. She is the main focus of the episode after all. Now, from past episodes, we've seen that Rainbow isn't exactly portrayed as the most studious pony. She's said to have dropped out of flight school, and she doesn't seem too knowledgeable outside of flying, weather, and daring too. I mean, the letter had an entire episode dedicated to it just to get Rainbow into admitting that reading is fun. And in this episode, she's once again faced with a problem I know way too much about. She has an exam coming up and has not studied for it at all. And already I think most of us can relate. Oh, and also, the exam determines her place in the Wonderbolts, if that wasn't clear enough already. So, if she fails, her dream gets utterly crushed, stomped, and sneezed on. You know, no stress.
My dreams of being in the Wonderbolts Reserve would have been totally crushed!
Twilight, being the egghead that she is, decides to help Rainbow. But when neither of them get anywhere, they both proceed to deliver this scene.
Knowing their origin and being able to properly represent them for all of Equestria is just as important.
Yeah, right. Some history buff like you must have made that up to bring us flyers down.
Knowing history actually is beneficial, Rainbow.
Beneficial for eggheads.
Girls. Well, this egghead knows history and can fly. Maybe I should become a Wonderbolt.
Just because you've got wings doesn't mean you can fly.
Girls.
You're barely able to just get off the ground.
This was the scene that stirred quite a lot of opinions when it first aired. Many said Rainbow was downright mean and was acting out of character. That while Rainbow is brash and egotistical, she would never attack some pony on such a personal level. Well, let me offer my 2 cents. I think that how Rainbow is acting is realistic. Now, before you guys mock me, let me clarify some things. Do I think she went too far in attacking Twilight? Yeah. Do I think she's acting out of character? Yes, very much so. But understand that acting out of character does not mean that they aren't acting correctly at the given situation. Try to imagine Rainbow's point of view. It has just been made aware to her that she has a very high chance of ruining her dream. After so many episodes of her working towards it, one mistake, one test, could be her downfall. Also, the exam is less than a day away. The stress on her must be unimaginable. And stress does horrible things to people. They might shut down or start giving up and or act out of character. I've also seen so many people go through the same thing. So while I agree that Rainbow is acting out of character, I don't think it's unrealistic that she is. We've seen how Rainbow handles stress. Spoilers, not well. And here we also learn that her defense mechanism is blaming someone else for her mistakes.
And it's all your fault.
Is it a good character trait? Probably not. But it's a character trait nonetheless. And what is a character without their flaws? Now we get to the part of the episode I'm most excited to talk about. The types of learning techniques. When the others see that Rainbow needs help with her exam, all of them are eager to show her how they themselves learn. It's been said that most people fall under one of 4 learning techniques. Note that these aren't concrete, just general points on how most people learn. Some may not fall into any of the categories, while some may fall into multiple. So, you know, don't take this too literally. First pony up, Twilight. She learns best by reading and writing. This is the technique that most will be familiar with and what most teachers do. They plop down a giant textbook, expect you to read, understand, and then apply that knowledge when you're asked to. Rainbow, unsurprisingly, doesn't seem to take to this method well. Anyone who's watched the show knows that she's a very hands-on learner. She prefers doing rather than thinking, sitting, or reading. Well, except when it comes to daring do. And so, with nothing interesting to keep her attention, Rainbow quickly drifts off to even the most mundane distraction. You know, I really love this, because I feel the same way. Unless the lesson is unique or different, I have a hard time focusing on one person simply talking about a subject or reading it in a book. That being said, I know a lot of people that love this technique. Their reasoning is that there's nothing getting in the way of them and the information they need to absorb. So if the read and write technique is how you learn best, great. Unfortunately, Rainbow quickly leaves and starts the argument that we covered earlier. Next, we get to Fluttershy. Her technique is using the animals to act out a play on the history of the Wonderbolts, which covers our next technique, visual. Visual learners pick up information the best when presented with images, videos, and other similar types of media. So by watching the story unfold in front of her eyes, Fluttershy is able to memorize the history of the Wonderbolts. Still though, this method doesn't seem to help Rainbow. She finds that there's too many things to focus on and is unable to keep up with what's happening. Also, doesn't help that the pets basically ruin the play halfway, causing Rainbow even more stress due to wasted time. Pinkie takes over and breaks down a rap, complete with beautiful 90s filter and hammer pants. Yeah, cause those never went out of style. She attempts to help Rainbow remember the history of the Wonderbolts through lyrics and a catchy beat. Which brings us to our next group of learners, auditory. These people learn best through, well, no prizes for correct guesses, audio. Songs, poetry, or even notes on the subject read out loud. By hearing someone talk about the information they need, they're able to remember it quicker than if it was written on a piece of paper. So, has Rainbow finally found a technique that works?
Wiki, General this and Colonel that. They're the Wonderbolts. Something that rhymes with that.
No. The answer is a very, very hard no. So, with 3 friends already struck out, who's next?
And I am just the pony to help.
Yeah, this will end well. As expected, Rarity's technique is clothes. Unfortunately, this isn't a Disney Fantasia sort of moment where the clothes come to life. Instead, she has sewn an entire line of apparel relating to every single Wonderbolt, showing us the last of the 4 learning techniques, kinesthetic. These are the people who learn best by doing. They understand the topic at hand through trial and error, making things with their hands that relate to the information they want to learn. Sort of like baking a cake, or in this case, making clothes that relate to the Wonderbolts. By spending time stitching and learning the in and outs of each of their uniforms, she unknowingly also absorbed their history. So will dresses, stitching, and making clothes be the learning technique that attracts Rainbow Dash?
This chair? Not clothes.
Take a guess. Oh well, at least we have Applejack, who embodies the learning technique that I used when I was taking my most important exam.
Well, what special study trick do you have, AJ?
Who, me? Oh, I got nothing.
Oh,
Why, I could tell you every little thing there is to know about the history of apples.
Learning about something that doesn't relate to the topic at hand. Replace apples with video games, and you basically have me when I was about to take my tests. It's amazing that so many different learning techniques are shown, because I'm sure while watching it, everyone could at least relate to one of them. This also ties into the moral, which I'll get to in a bit. So with 5 strikes, Rainbow is now out of options and goes to sulk, trying to accept that her dream is basically over. And this moment struck a painful chord with me and many others, because Rainbow has done something she's never done before. She's given up, and this is honestly what happens when you put anyone under too much stress. They break. See, Rainbow never ever gave up. No matter what problem she encountered, no matter how much she was panicking, she was always still willing to try. She was always ready to come out on top over her worries. But when people break and they give up, that's the worst and lowest anyone can actually go. This is the final consequence of pressure. Something her friends hadn't considered when they were pressuring her to do well. Remember Rainbow's outbursts when she was surrounded by her friends? If you're wondering why she broke then and there, it's because all around her, her friends know more about Wonderbolt history than she does. This is something she should be good at, something she should be amazing at. But due to her arrogance, she let it slip away. And she knows it. That's the worst part. What's more, all of her friends have a way of learning that works for them. These are the learning techniques we discussed just a few moments before about auditory, visual, etc. Rainbow doesn't have this way of learning. She tested them all and none of them worked. And again, she's aware. All of this just makes her feel inadequate. Now keep in mind, this is the man that dropped out of school as a filly, even though she was the best flyer there. So the only reason is that she failed her tests and exams. That mistake has gone unforgotten by the bullies we saw in Sonic Rainbow.
Get kicked out any flight schools lately?
I didn't get kicked out.
It's one point in her life that has haunted her. And now it's happening again. To be blunt, Rainbow feels stupid. She broke because she had to deal with the pressure to pass, the pressure to do well, and peer pressure from her friends. Once again, she's going to drop out, so to speak. But she's no longer dropping out of school. She's dropping out of her dream. So far, she has accomplished nothing, despite trying her very best. And that is the most crushing feeling of all. To know that you pulled in your very best and it still wasn't enough to get you through. So, logically, what else is there for the confident, brash Rainbow Dash to do but fall down and give up? And if her friends had left her, she would have remained in that state for months, even years. Knowing that her dream of becoming a Wonderbolt was never realized because of her mistake, the very same mistake she made all those years ago. Well, luckily for us, Twilight is smart in more ways than just reading. She invents a way for Rainbow to learn the history of the Wonderbolts, after figuring out Rainbow's talent. She has the ability to subconsciously learn everything on the ground while she is flying. And by the way, organizing all that in what I assume to be a couple of hours, it's a pretty damn good job, Ponyville. I also don't know how to classify Rainbow's learning technique, but that's fine. This stunt picks Rainbow back up from the depths, giving her the confidence we all know and love. Which brings us to our moral. You know what? Twilight, you explain.
Rainbow Dash finally learned the history of the Wonderbolts, but she's not the only pony that needed a lesson. I needed to learn something just as important. One way of learning isn't better than another. After all, every pony is unique and individual.
This moral is something that a lot of people can use. Just because you learn one method doesn't mean everyone else does. As she said, every individual is unique, down to how we pick up information. This is a lesson that teachers, parents, and students could all use in a different way. It's actually kind of incredible, just how different this message is, depending on your age and the situation you're in. You should never tell someone that they're stupid just because they can't learn something. Chances are how they're learning is what's wrong. And likewise, don't think you're slow just because you can't pick something up as quickly as others could. A change in the method you're using could just be the thing you need. And it might even shock you at how big of a difference it can make. Finally, if you ever feel too stressed, as if the world is crushing down on you, and you're not making progress, please take a step back. Take some time to yourself and breathe. Do something you enjoy and come back to your studies later. Because if you don't, you'll break, just like Rainbow. You'll give up. And trust me, that's not a place you want to be. At that point, you won't be in a hole, you'll be in a pit. So, give yourself time away from the books or away from the work you have. It'll do you good. So what do I think about this episode? Well, it's one of my favorites in any kids show, ever. The jokes all hit on point. The message is simple yet mature. And the way it's delivered is incredibly well executed. Once again, Amy Keating Rogers shows us why she's a great writer and delivers a moral that works for all ages. Do I have a nitpick? I guess. I would have preferred if Rainbow got a 75 or a 60 for her test at the end, instead of the 100. This will show that hard work is just as important as finding the right learning technique. But honestly, it's such a minor nitpick that it's like finding a scratch in a cathedral. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and that I was able to show you guys parts of the story you might not have noticed before. I'm Jaden, and I can't wait to storyboard more episodes with all of you.
An admiral named Barry Flight and General Kaput have the bull flight. We're not style as the net. Commander Easy Glider was the real cream of the crop. But with the
And Granny Smith discovered the first Granny Smith in Philadelphia when she was just a filly.
So was Granny Smith named after the apple? Or, wait, she lived her childhood with the name Granny? I need a minute. My head hurts.